And we're here at ADIPEC, and Helima Croft joins me now with RBC Capital Markets. Thank you so much, Helima. I know it's been a very busy time here. I've seen you've had an opportunity to talk with many of the ministers, with the CEOs, really get a handle and a feel on what's happening in the market, and also in a week that's been very, very busy.
Very, very volatile. I mean, I think what's been extraordinary about this conference is it's taking place against the backdrop of a lot of volatility in the oil markets. And what was really extraordinary was you had the most powerful officials in the industry here to really comment on what was going on. I think it was extraordinarily to watch yesterday. We had the OPEC president, the Secretary General of OPEC, coming out and making very strong, determined statements about OPEC's resolve to really do whatever it takes to stabilize this market.
Now, of course, just before ADIPEC also we had the OPEC JMMC meeting, this, where the ministers are really almost that advisory committee getting ready for the big December meeting. Pulling all that together, and they must have had a great chance to have some bilateral meetings, I think, would imagine, at this as well, because it's been a really hectic week, and the market is incredibly volatile this week.
We've seen such volatility. I mean, we've seen oil prices declined by 25% over a 3-week period. And so this Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee meeting on Sunday was incredibly important for signaling about OPEC action on December 6th. And what I thought was so interesting in the press conference was when His Excellency Sohail Marzoui, UAE's oil minister, the OPEC president, basically said the policy of putting additional barrels on the market is coming to a close. We're going to look at constructive action to really stabilize this market. Again, very strong signalings about OPEC's willingness, again, to do whatever it takes to really try to bring the balance back to the market.
And it really is about balance. This is their long-term position. This is something that they actually have to do. And I think what we're hearing again from him is speculation will happen, the short-term volatility will happen. But do you think sometimes, but that's how the market thrives, isn't it? It is about volatility sometimes.
It is about volatility, but sometimes the real challenge for these ministers, and frankly for these CEOs, is how do you deal with sometimes when we have fundamentals look in a certain place, but then you have the financial markets in another place. And so what we want is we want to bring the fundamental and financial markets close together. And so I think, again, what was really important is when you have the OPEC minister saying, we don't want prices too high, and we don't want them too low. We don't want to hurt the consumer, but we also want to encourage investment. So what we're really trying to do is try to stabilize the market. And what was interesting as well was not only did we have the ministers, but we had the head of research at OPEC really present the outlook for where they see the supply and demand picture. And they revised downward the demand picture for this year because of concerns about global growth, trade war impact on growth. And so that all becomes part of the toolkit that OPEC has to use now when they think about action on December 6th.
Again, after September 6th, we look ahead to 2019, and there certainly, without a doubt, will be challenges there. Again, that bit of softening in the market that we see. Demand and growth and expectations, I mean, that's key to actually their survival in many ways.
Absolutely. But again, there are all these unknowns. And I think the Russian oil minister, Alexander Novak, he really brought that issue up on Sunday, basically saying there are these uncertainties. So on the one hand, there's a demand uncertainty. But on the other, we still do not know the full effects of Iran's sanctions. There were these 8 waivers given by President Trump that basically made many participants in the market think it's not going to be a particularly tough policy. And yet, the volumes that could be coming off from Iran in terms of exports could be very substantial. It's opaque at the moment how many Iranian barrels are going to be off the market. So when you're thinking about being a minister, being a planner, you have to balance, all of these unknowns on the demand side and on the supply side as well.
Now, it's great to see you here again at ADIPEC. You're always tremendously welcome here, and I know you've been very busy as well. How important when you come to a gathering like this, you're based in the US, and of course you're looking at the global markets, but to come to a gathering like this here in the Middle East, how important is this gathering?
I mean, I think it's so important. It's also so important now to have this gathering. But what I love about it is, again, you have the ministers, you have the CEOs, you have so many different participants in this industry all in one place, all having extraordinary dialogue.
And again, part of that dialogue, and I think we hear it from them too, is there's a lot of pressing issues at the moment. I think it's almost we are in that transition. They realize there's so many disruptions going on. A lot of attention on the downstream here too, which was quite interesting too, whereby they're really looking at more value. What I'm hearing is almost like that barrel of oil is not a whole lot of use unless we can do something with it. So talk to me just a little bit about how I think really embracing the entire value chain.
The value chain for oil and energy. I mean, energy 4.0. And I think this is one of the key concerns that people have in the markets right now is where is the demand for oil going to be? And so when we think about sort of demand growth and we think about industries like petrochemicals industry, like how that is going to drive demand for oil going forward, having those conversations, because important investment decisions have to be made now. And so you have to have a clear picture on where is the demand growth going to be? Where do we need to make these investment opportunities?
Talk to me just a little bit about, the challenges in the future, because ultimately this is where we have to look at as well.
I think the challenge is, what is the next disruption? And think about what we've, in the last couple of years, the US shale industry has been this great disruptor. And we're still in the learning phase at times in terms of what does the growth of US shale look like? When is this going to plateau? Is it going to be enough after 2025 to fill the supply gap? And what type of investments need to be made now? And so I think that is one of the things. I mean, the whole conference is focused so much on AI. What type of technological innovations do we need to be thinking about now that could be disruptive for the industry, and how do we prepare for those disruptions?
Now, you also moderated a panel on diversity, and I know this is, I think, close to everybody's heart in this industry. We really need to have a more diverse industry. It's beginning to happen. This is a very global industry. Talk to me a little bit about that panel.
I thought the panel was extraordinary. And what these, we had an all-female panel, and they even made a joke that they wasn't necessarily diverse in terms of gender, but the views they brought to the table were outstanding. They made the strong business case for diversity, the bottom line for diversity, and then they really walked through the type of things that still need to be overcome. The unconscious bias issue. How do we deal with the work-life balance? All the kind of taboo issues they brought on the stage in a very honest and open discussion.
And indeed, I think some of these issues too are the issues that men are facing. They probably don't talk about it as much.
And that was one of the panelists said that today. She said, look, the issue about work-life balance is not just an issue for females in the energy industry. It's for men as well. When they have children, how do they basically thrive at work and thrive at home?
So you're looking forward to hopefully joining us next year. The year ahead, what do we need to be looking at, just collectively as an industry?
I mean, again, I think the really important issues are thinking about AI, thinking about disruption, thinking about being forward-looking and sort of meeting these challenges, and the investment issue. Time and time again, we hear about investment in the energy industry is going into the US, it's going into short cycle, ensuring that we have enough investment in the long lead time projects.